Welcome to Esoteric Thoughts. Today we have Michael Tsarion. Michael, can you tell us what is psychic vampirism?
Sure. Yeah. It's uh it's just an exchange of energy between people in which one is basically predator, the other victim. We have so many pieces that we've discovered through time about the nature of pathology, about evil, even because I think of psychic vampirism as something that is an evil type of process, but you can just see it as an exchange of energy. Think about all of us. We all live on something else. Even if you're a vegetarian, you're living on, vegetation. You're breathing the air, and that means microbes are dying. So it has to be said that we're all at some point predators, one way or the other. But this is a situation in which, say, just to make it very, very simple, two people are in a relationship, say, it could be in a family, or it could be in a more of a secondary relationship, man, woman, whatever. It is very, very, it's been proven now, actually, that there is this exchange of life force or energy in which, in the end, one person is losing energy, losing will, losing zest for life, and the other person is coasting and having a ball, basically like feeding off another person's energy. And so you can look at all the different books out there, to get the details. But one thing that must be added is that in every single book on that kind of subject, energy vampirism, psychic vampirism, or anything even sort of approaching that, it's always a case of the victim being sucked of their life force or their will or some other asset by the perpetrator, the predator. But I got into the subject because in years and years of study of this matter, I think it was 1997, something like that, when I finally started to, put something out that was more published. But in decades of studying this phenomena, I saw the flaw in that. Yeah, psychic vampirism definitely is about, some sort of a abstraction of another person's will, life force, and zest, definitely. But the part that I wanted to add, which still hasn't been picked up on, is that there's also a process of dumping that goes on, which means it's a two-way signal. It's not just a mosquito on your skin sucking, out your blood, as is the normal view of it. I think that works, but it needs to be updated. It is also a process in which your body, as an energy battery or cell, a repository, is being flooded by the negative toxic energy of somebody else. And this has not been really taken up and studied, but I stand by it wholeheartedly. Because if you're in the presence of one of these vampires, not only do you have a lot of mental issues, you'll find slowly that your energy is just not your own. And that in certain projects, you'll find that there's a sort of a heaviness that comes about. And this is because that person is literally using you as a sort of processor to flush and clean themselves. And this is why often it's the best of people who attract the psychic vampire. Evil people rarely attract evil. It's always the man of virtue, the woman of virtue. You see the person of virtue, the person who's trying to better themselves, who means well, who's got just loads and loads of virtues, that runs into this creature. They're attracted by your light. And it's not because they just want to suck on the light, as is the comic book version of this. They see you as a kind of a dumpster, because by the time that they've met you or you've met them, these people are maxed out toxic. But you don't see it because there's a mystique. All psychic vampires have to create a persona. We already know what that is, in a mask or whatever. But they create one that is particularly attractive, particularly light, particularly effervescent. Right, because they're the dirtiest, most evil buggers on the earth. But that doesn't work. You wouldn't let them into your life, would you? So the psychopath, will put marzipan on the top, have an extra sweetness, will extra love bomb you like you can't even believe. But also, as I've just implied, they'll pick somebody who hasn't experienced that before. So in your early communications with these people, and some of them are so sharp they don't even need to talk to you, you can just see what you're like. If they can see that you're hungering for love, if you've been brought up you've been brought up badly, and that you're basically desperate in your spirit for friendship, camaraderie, love, care, Jesus, they move right on in. They just have this technique. Well, think of the other side. If you are loved, if you're full and complete, they're not going to get much out of you. It'll be a very short relationship. So they not only need to love bomb you, they need you to be so grateful, so thankful. Oscar Wilde said, if I'm lying half dead, I don't question whether the hand that's mopping my brow is the hand of a murderess. I am so grateful, right? And we can enter into relationships exactly like that. And we forgive the toxic stuff of the other person because they've covered it up. These people are already moving into your life with an agenda, and they're already very, very made up. And it'll be very difficult for you in the beginning. So say you meet a guy, hey, he's a friend, we met in the street, whatever, he's driving around, he's picking me up, we're going for, to the match, or, we go out for the restaurant, it seems like he's just pouring, goodies on me, meeting some of my needs. And that's all it takes for the hungry person, you see, to believe that they finally lucked out, and they just can't believe their luck. And this will happen across the board. So the love bombing is a massive, massive, massive warning, actually. What more can one say about that? Right. So then it's not just that they're taking resources of yours, because obviously sometimes, the vampire comes into people's lives who don't have a lot to give. They're not doing well materially. They're not, they're not up in the penthouse. Things are rough. And this is why I could not accept the normal definition, because people I talked to and studied, they didn't have anything to give. What would the vampire be doing hanging around? No, you've already got what they want, which is goodness. You're already trusting. You're already guilty as hell for every good deed you're doing to everybody else. Did you know that that's one of the greatest syndromes that is plaguing the world? A little voice in your head making you guilty for every good deed. You have noticed that, right? Well, if you haven't, the vampire has, and on it could go. If you go to my site on the subject, you'll see a breakdown there of that. So what this means is that defense then becomes very, very important. But if defense is important, then boundaries are important. Well, boundaries, what are you talking about? And they will break down your sense of boundary by this love bombing. You can't believe it. It's too good to be true. Or what do they say? It's too good to be true. It's too sweet. It can't live forever. Well, that's right. But strangely, because we're all in this deep need, especially today, we will open the door to this kind of creature. And it'll be very difficult to establish what they are done in the past. If you thought that was going to be a help for you, go, well, tell us about your previous relationships. All right, here comes the comic book story. Here comes the fiction. Because you're asking them, they're going to tell you a tissue of lies. How are you going to prove it wrong? So the way that you would prove them to be who they are is a fine science, or find out whatever you want. And that's what my work was dedicated to, is to try and give people some tools. But without this idea that you're also being dumped on, there's big chapters ripped out of the book. It's not enough. You've got to know that you're being sucked of energy. Yes, sure. But then again, that would imply that you've got a lot to give. But what about those cases where you don't have a lot of material things to give? And being around you is not any more special to the vampire than being around anybody else. They could easily pick a more successful person. Yeah, but that more successful person may have a lot of boundaries, may not be so easy to love bomb, maybe a sucker, as the normal term goes. So you're the sucker, you go in, you get under their spell, you believe it's, this Hollywood fantasy, and you've made it, and there's a part of our minds really, really want that dopamine rush. In comes the vampire, and for a particular period of time, 6 months, 18 months, whatever, will love bomb you, and they'll walk in rhythm with you. They'll try to also learn as they go too. But all the time, they're through this psychosomatic means, they dump their own toxicity and filth, the weeds of their being, the evil deeds that they've done to others, right? That's all going to be poured into you. So one of the techniques then is to notice your moods and notice your emotions day by day, minute by minute when it becomes serious, but generally say, hey, you know, this morning I felt really, really good. Or I came into this whole thing, I used to feel really good, and now I don't. I'm tired. Black thoughts keep accosting me. You go to a GP, they're not going to tell you, so yeah, these conditions are a bit odd. Who are you hanging around with? You can wait another couple of millennia before those medics even get round to inquiring about your emotional state, your moods, and who you're with. It's not there, and that's what my work was dedicated to, the conclusion of the psychic vampirism program. I end on that there must be radical change in the medical profession to note that this is a case. And that's saying it, knowing that, yeah, a lot of false people can blame others, but that's in everything. If I say, well, the conditions I'm in is to do, I was with a psychic vampire, you're not going to meet her or him, but I'm telling you they were. Yeah, okay, but you know, there's a 50% chance you're a lying bugger, and no, that didn't happen, and you're just willy-nilly. You might be a psychic vampire, and you've learned the technique from flicking through a few books and know how to blame some poor innocent person, and hopefully the world will listen to you. Do you realize that half the people who've got shows on psychic vampirism on the net are themselves chronic psychic vampires, and that the ones who run channels on narcissism are obvious narcissists? Just close your eyes and have a good listen, and if your senses are aware. And that's what my work is to do, is to build up these hidden senses. You don't just have 5 senses. Oh, no, 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 no. You've got other senses for just this purpose, but they're only awakened, you know, once you have a certain coordination, and once you have what's known as a statement of higher value, which almost nobody has. So this is why these predators can exist.
Can this concept be applied to cult leaders and even religious leaders?
No question about that. Yeah, if I didn't apply it in the website of the program, I think I did actually, but yes, absolutely. When you hear about these gurus saying, I am here to take your karma, right? Well, wait a minute, let's break that down. There's 6,000 people out there. You're going to take their karma. It's all lovely words. And by the way, if you can cover it up with some Indian and Sanskrit words, it sounds even better. Right? It's a mechanism of words, lovely Sanskrit, you know, words. Underneath it, it's just total illogicism and nonsense, and also auto-hypnosis, because in walking in rhythm with you to find out what music you like, what poetry you like, what your schedule is, you know, what your likes and dislikes, they're walking and studying you. You're not studying them, you're the schmuck, right? But they're studying you so that they can know what gifts to bring and what, you know, they're schmoozing you. They're constantly schmoozing. So what movies do you like? Oh, you like spaghetti westerns. I love spaghetti westerns. That Clint Eastwood, he's just marvelous, right? But you go to their collection, you don't find one movie there. They go, oh, I'm so into classical music like you. Go to their record collection. It's all fucking Barry Manilow and Beyonce or some shit, you know, some trivial shit. They pretend to talk about their past because you talk about their past, but ask them to bring out the family album. Now, it'll be a big box full of, even if they have photographs of the past, there'll be this, and what's this? A big box full of disheveled snapshots, because that's right, they're episodics. That's how they live their life. Check it out. Cross-reference their stories. Do some homework on your own side. And most importantly, if you go to a party or something like that, and I list a lot of these things on the site that you can do, observe their behavior in different company. Pretend you're not, though. Don't give it away. Observe their face, their manner, their behavior when they're in. So one guy I knew that was doing this, he would, and this was a house that always had parties. It was one of these frat houses, some ugly thing. And that person would always exclude himself from the party because he was watching this girlfriend of his who he thought was a psychic vampire. And so he would go, look, I got homework to do, you know, oh, I'm on the phone, you know, I'm doing my homework, the schoolwork, I'm way behind. And so he never went to any of the parties that were raging upstairs. What he would do, though, is step outside for a smoke and watch through the window this girlfriend of his. Well, let's have an education, because the person's persona obviously was very, very different than the one that they were portraying to him. You see, this kind of caper. And you can do it across the board. It's a very handy thing. But see, I think that the psychic vampires always show you who they are, but you are not able to digest it. So when you hear these gurus, for instance, in the East, and not just in the East, there's a lot of them in the West, of course, they are going to be people who are excellent with the sophistry. They have perfected a certain rhetoric. They may love bomb you to hell in a multiplicity of ways. One is just telling you that they're going to get rid of your karma, or you're going to the, be in the paradisical other world, and we know the path and all of this. And how are you going to tell a difference if you haven't actually studied the roots of religion, the roots of mysticism, which is almost a lifetime of a study? How are you going to know that this individual guru or this individual guy on the banks of the Ganges or anywhere else in the world is telling you a tissue of lies? There's entire institutions in the East, and I suppose in the West, that are built entirely on lies. Nothing they say about their religion, or the origin of their beliefs, has any proper, correct chronology behind it. It's just made up junk. But because it's highfalutin words and highfalutin, decor, optics, you go for it. So absolutely. In fact, you could almost think that the world is predated over by these cults. There are a few exceptions, and there's definitely a few exceptions in terms of religion or mysticism, certainly. But the vast majority of institutionalized schools of thought, particularly in the East, are totally vampiristic and totally inhuman. And they purvey the techniques of auto-hypnotism so that they can, have not only a mass control, they have powers, but they also want you to sort of condition yourself. So a lot of the practices that they get you into, looking at mandalas, say reciting mantras, rolling beads, hanging out with others to chant, all of that, it's got to be thrown out. All of that. It's rubbish. Nothing to do with mysticism. Fasting, changing your diet, changing a lot of things. Watch out for it. Do it when you feel that it is right. But even then, be very cautious about the mood changes, your psyche changes in your consciousness when you get into all of these things, and how slowly your reason is being eroded away by these idiotic rites. Just watch out for. I'll be doing a lot of programs, and or not a lot of programs. I'll be doing a mammoth program on non-dualism, which is creeping through the West right now. It's largely based on some of this, Eastern divination. We don't want to get into it now, but I'm working on a project there to, again, hopefully stave off. The love bomb there would be just simply a feeling of non-responsibility, going back to an infantile state in which other people are taking control over every aspect of life. The reality is proven too difficult, but I know a way to go back to the pleasure principle. But I have to disguise that. The optics are it's a really holy philosophy. It's nothing of the kind. It's just a stupid ass doctrine come about from a big hodgepodge of lunatic Eastern beliefs, that just don't die off. They don't go away. And so I could, I wrote an article, I think it's called Stilling the Mind. It's on the Michael Tsarion site, which will, introduce people to the chicanery, stilling the mind, especially in the East. But people can easily see the Western equivalents. It's vampirism when any great crowd of people working like an energy battery are just, hail, hail, hail. So you get this in the mega churches. The whole thing is absolutely remarkable. The vampirism there may be just making the guy rich, super rich, but that's still a form of vampirism. And also anyone who is using your virtues. See, the great psychologist R.D. Laing said, if I trust and love, there's a little bit of a vice in that. Because if I'm a trusting and loving person, I automatically imagine that the person I'm with also is a lover and a truster. Who told you to believe that? Who told you to believe that without trusting it? So without testing, you see, things like that. So watch out your own virtues, how they bring you down.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.